words when necessary. We seek to preach the gospel all the time. We only use words when necessary, which means our actions should speak louder than our words. Our actions should speak louder than our words. And that's what our conversation is about tonight. Our conversation tonight is about faith in action. So before we get into our conversation, we have a very, very esteemed panel of mighty men of valor, mighty men of God. And I probably won't do all of them justice. So we're going to start with Pastor Tatum and work our way from the right to the left to allow them just to take a few moments to introduce themselves to you all.
My name is Pastor Charles Tatum, pastor of the Shepherd Baptist Church, 1555 East Hudson Street. I've had the privilege of being there in either a associate pastor capacity or the pastor's capacity for well over almost 25 years. And I don't like to talk too much about myself. I like that action part. Action speak louder than words. But I've been blessed to be able to work with Dr. Troy, Pastor Leggins, Pastor Stanley, and we've been able to form a good working group. And we call ourselves the Concerned Lady Clergy Group. And we are concerned with both the social, economic, and spiritual status of Linden as a whole. And it is our joy to come together to serve and to make sure that we make sure that our community that we serve and many of you live in, that is not taken advantage of, nor is it forgotten. We want to make sure that those who have the powers that be, that they understand that somebody's going to say something.
I'm going to stop right there, Pastor Tatum, because you got some good stuff that you're about to share. Save it for the conversation. Dr. Troy.
Keith Troy, pastor of New Salem Baptist Church.
Woo!
That's Stokely's mother. My mother is to me because she's Stokely's mother. She comes every night on Sundays. My daughter, that's Avery. I'm now pastor of New Salem for 41 years. I'm so grateful for that responsibility in trying to do what we need to do. I'm grateful for these gentlemen, because as my younger brother said, and I don't think people understand that clergy of Columbus get along. And that's a key piece, but that doesn't happen a lot of places. And there's mutual respect and mutual accountability. There's things that we can say to each other that other folks can't say, and I'm grateful for that. As a couple of weeks ago at the pastor's retreat, among the Baptist pastors, I am now the senior in terms of longevity. So these are my younger colleagues, and not the pastor's younger colleagues. And so I'm grateful to sit in that seat and provide whatever support we can. Not only what Crusaders is doing, but what any of our faith-based institutions are doing.
Joe Stanley, I'm pastor of Greater Troy Baptist Church, 1561 Cleophas Key Boulevard, right behind the Douglas Rec Center, real close to the Roseland area. This past Sunday, we celebrated 3 years together as pastor and still very fresh, still very excited about the work of Kingdom and Community. Before I was called to the pastorate, I lived on 19th Avenue. I could step onto my front porch and see St. Stephen's from my front porch. I lived there. My aunt lived there, my great aunt, over 40-something years. She died of dementia and left me that home. And my family, my wife, our 2 children, we moved into that home. It was after that I got called to Greater 12. From there, we were able to start the Greater Community Foundation, which is housed in South Linden, and what used to be the Mount Lebanon Baptist Church. It actually sits right behind Kinlaw. So I work out of that building Monday through Friday, and I migrate back and forth between South and Linden. That's just one Linden. And I'm just really excited to sit on the panel with some of these great men of God with all this wisdom. I'm excited about that.
We should mention you just received your MDiv, is that correct?
I'll graduate this Saturday.
Yeah.
Graduating on the MDiv is about 10 years ago, almost to the day when I graduated with my MDiv. So I know the struggle. But, I'm Pastor Timothy Liggins. I pastor Bethel AME Church. We are on the corner of Cleveland and 26th Avenue. And when people they try to picture that. I said, picture the McDonald's, where McDonald's used to be, right across from where McDonald's used to be. Proud to be the pastor of Bethel because it has such a rich history in this community for social justice. This happens to be the oldest continuous African American congregation in Linden. We moved from the south side to Linden in 1967. Yeah, and so as I said, it's had a rich legacy. So between the rich legacy that Bethel has and the rich legacy of the AME Church as a whole, we're the first African American denomination, a denomination that was created out of the first protest by blacks in this community. And so all of that it inspires me and really convicts me to continue the progress for social justice. But anyway, so I'm co-chair of the Concerned Linden Clergy Group, and I actually grew up in East High Tiger. No tomatoes,
We're about to get Pastor Escort out of here.
But I had 5 sets of cousins that lived in Linden, so I was in Linden about as much as it was on the east side. But proudly that I was planted here, and I believe that we're supposed to blossom, bloom where you're planted. And so I just want to do my best, because I'm planted here, so I want to do the best for the community. Proud to be here.
Beautiful. Just to kind of set some direction for our panelists tonight, we want it to be a conversation, so I may deliver a question to one panelist, but please feel free to allow it to be a conversation amongst yourselves and amongst the room. And we're going to kick it off with our elder statesman tonight, if that's all right.
Amen.
Dr. Troy New Salem has been in this community for many, many years. You've been pastoring in this community for 40 plus years, as you said. And anybody who spent any time at all around you know that one of your famous lines, your charge to your congregation is that it's important for us to put feet to our prayers. So I want to open with the first question for you, Dr. Troy, if you don't mind. What does faith in action look like in your congregation?
Faith in action at the New Salem Church literally begins with the benediction. But I try to say this, having played football and all that. And Sunday is the huddle. Monday through Saturday should be running plays. And the only reason you huddle is run plays. And since we are dispersed all over the city, we're not limited to any one place. If the only place you can get excited is with us on a Sunday morning, then you miss everything we are about. So New Salem is not just the places where our members disperse. So we believe real strongly in marketplace ministry. So if you're doing ministry in the marketplace on your job, school, whatever the case is, you're affecting what we're trying to do on Sunday morning. That does not release us from our responsibilities in Linden. We basically have got what we call the Golden Triangle. That's 5 blocks around the New Salem Church. So whatever happens in the 5 blocks, we want to know about. We want to help make it better. Can you hear me? Want to help make it better. Also want to be in line with those folks who live around us. Some years ago, we did a demographic study at the New Salem Church, and we didn't have one walk-up member. That was an indictment. It was a heck of an indictment. So we made it our intention. I may not see you on Sunday, but now on Wednesdays, we feed the community for free every Wednesday. Let me say that again, we feed the community for free every Wednesday. I got 2 bosses here, Ms. Peg and Mayor Linden is one of them, in terms of that. So we see people on Wednesday we'll never see on Sunday. And that's okay with us. Some of us folks we do see on Wednesday have transformed our membership on Sunday and keep us relevant and real. And so that's kind of how we balance putting feet on prayers. And I'll give a backstory behind that way later on, because our grandfather never went to church. So he held us accountable for what happened after church.
Beautiful, beautiful. Pastor Stanley, you're 3 years in, you prepared after Dr. Troy, 40 plus years in. What does faith in action look like for grade 12?
So for me, in essence, to what Dr. Troy talked about, it's really just making sure we put feet to our faith. I'm in a really unique position because, again, I'm 3 years in, and the first year and a half, I took internally. So it was very clear to me that I couldn't start working on things outside of the church if we didn't have any good structure inside of the church. I didn't want to be pushing out things that weren't built correctly, that didn't have strong foundation. So I had to start there, making sure that we were equipped and the church was ready to be able to do real relevant ministry, because the last thing you want to do is be cooking, half cooked food, and then take it out to people when they get sick. So I wanted to make sure that what we had as far as faith and ministry and mission was healthy, and everybody was on the same page. So for me, it's that, making sure that we're grounded, we're on the same page. I also spend a lot of time, because I'm the youngest pastor in the city. I'm 29. I turned 29 on Monday, this past Monday. I'm the youngest pastor in the city, and probably will be for a little while. But because of that, I have a unique position to where my wife and I, who's younger than I, we attract young adults, and I'm trying to shift our congregation and community in seeing that you don't have to wait until you're 40, 50, 60, 70 something to be involved in faith, be involved in leadership, be involved in community. But no, you can create that type of platform to do real missional community work, and you're 25, 26, 27, 28. So it's also kind of creating that space as well for those emerging leaders.
That's good, that's good. So you are really kind of dovetail this into what I want to bring to Pastor Tatum. Pastor Tatum, the reality is faith in action. Right? You as an individual may live out your faith in action, but how do you rally a congregation to buy into the mission and vision? And faith is not just what we do on Sunday mornings, but faith is something that we do outside the four walls of the church.
Well, of course, it begins with me as the pastor, because folks we say to our children, now they may not listen so much to what we say, but they're certainly watching everything that we do. So it begins with me. And one of the issues that I'm having with this putting feet to faith is that it seems that there's been this paradigm shift. And some of it is because of COVID. People have gotten used to being in their pajamas on Sunday and things of that nature. And it's affecting my congregation because, as all of us know, for a few years, we didn't even see inside our brick walls. Only thing we may have seen was the pastor on the screen, doing the sermon. So therefore, throughout the week, all we did was go out and get our newspapers and still have our pajamas on, all this stuff. So there's been this paradigm shift. So one of the things that I'm finding now that I'm having to do, I'm having to go through and re-equip, change the way people think, because the way even old Christians think now is completely different to when we went into this thing. Then the other thing is that our young people now, we as pastors, we got to refit ourselves. Like Brother Stanley said, he's 29. Well, I'm 69. So the way that I think is a lot different than the way that generation thinks. So now what I'm doing is I'm re-educating myself so I can re-educate my congregation. And we're doing reassessing things. Number one, I want to take an introspective look at my congregation and talk to them and ask them, what ministries do we have in our church that they think are the most prevalent to them? Most important. What all these ministries that we got, which ones are the most important? And then secondly, and I think we talked about this at our conference, The folks that we deal with now, they're needs-based folks. So what are the actual things that they feel like is most pertinent to them as far as needs? Because, like you said, you can't go out there and have good food, give it to somebody to have them sick. So that's kind of where we are right now. I'm refitting. You know, I'm not gonna keep on doing the same old things, getting the same old results, but keep on doing anyhow, because somebody said that's insanity.
That's good, that's good. Pastor Liggins, next question to you. So Pastor Tatum talked about the age gap between himself and Dr. Stanley, and how there may be different paradigms, mindsets, or approaches to ministry. I'm sure Pastor Tatum would attest to this, I'm sure Dr. Troy would attest to this, and maybe even yourself. How will you as a leader continue to reinvent yourself to meet the specific needs of the time that you're currently living in?
Yeah, so, what worked 20 years ago is not gonna work now. You know, sometimes what worked 5 years, 4 years, you know, especially coming out of COVID, it's not gonna work. And so it's constant assessing, constant assessment. There was a few years ago, I encountered a gentleman who had this program. He basically called it CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. And so, you know, so we should always be looking at ways in which, you know, what are we doing and how are we doing it? Is that the best way? Can it be better? Can it be more effective? Can it be more efficient? You know? And so I happen to major in production and operations management. So I'm always, you know, focused in that way. Are we doing things the optimal way? And so, yeah, so it's all about, you know, you should always be assessing what you're doing. Looking at your strengths, looking at your weaknesses, you know, the SWOT analysis, for instance.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of those, assessing those opportunities, to take advantage of it.
That's good, that's good. Dr. Troy, I want to pass that same question to you, because you haven't just done ministry for 40 plus years. I think all of us would attest to the fact that Ms. Sanders has done ministry at a certain level of excellence for 40 plus years. How is it that you've been able to have such longevity, not just in taking up a spot in the people, but actually doing effective ministry?
Mine may be unique enough since we most of you met my wife. We have 5 grown children. One of the keys for us, because neither one of us grew up with our grandparents, is that we would be ever present in the lives of our grandchildren. So every Sunday, they have dinner with us. There's also a time of what I call the Troy Sanhedrin. And what that means is they critique Sunday morning. Now that goes from my oldest who turned 48 today to the youngest who's 35. Look at you. 38? What up? Somewhere there you go. You have 5 grown kids and you have 7 grandkids. So now the question becomes, how do you design something on a Sunday morning that lasts maybe 90 minutes now, that satisfies all those appetites?
Yes, sir.
It cannot be steak and potatoes. It is a smorgasbord. So something has to be relevant for each one of them to keep them going. And they have no problem at all sharing with me their honest, brutally honest opinion. I have 2 that love coming on into actual worship. 2 don't believe that they need to be there because we created this whole thing that they can now see virtually, and if they can't participate in it at home, then why did I create it? You know, so it's just interesting.
Great question.
So it's very humbling because you may be thinking you got it going really like, yeah, we wasn't feeling that at all. From the music to whatever else, you know, to the sermon critique of that example, and then there are 2 people who relate to me by my mother who stop by on Sundays also. They shall remain nameless, but they're in this room. To add their critique to the service. So for that, it keeps me saying, I may think it was a great Sunday, And after they get done, I want all of them to leave my house. So it's inbred in who we are, but I will say that and tell you, nobody's gonna be harder on it than I am. Those who work for me know that every time after every major event, here's my word.
So what?
Okay, what we did, so what? Did it impact anybody else outside of us? If it only made us feel good. And what's the difference between us and the person out there in the street putting drugs? So that's how it constantly makes me critical of what we're doing. The day I get satisfied is the day it's time for me to give it to somebody else.
I'm gonna pose this question to the panel at large. Feel free to tackle it at your discretion, panelists. How do we balance spiritual ministry with practical ministry? How do we balance spiritual ministry, i.e. what we do on Sunday morning, maybe Bible study night, with practical ministry? How do we balance that? And if there's one particular program that you're proud of, that your ministry does in the realm of practical, please feel free to expound upon that. You can volunteer, be voluntold. We're gonna go to Pastor Taylor.
I think first that I believe all my colleagues here at the table have a moment, at least in the morning. I've even seen you on Facebook with your moments in the morning. That's me. I start out with me in the morning. I gotta have my time with the Lord. And in that moment, I'm honest with God. I'm not doing all these and thous and God or the ancient path. I'm not going through. I'm saying, Father, I need you. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. These are the hurts. These are the pains. So now, Father, that I brought them to you, I need for you to give me answers. And not only give me answers, but show me how, to move forward with this thing. Because one of the things that I don't ever want to do is to mislead someone, or cause somebody to end up going, we ain't got no baby here, right? Going to hell, and it's because of something that I did. We got to be brutally honest. It begins with us. And then once again, it goes back to putting some feet to it. Because I tell anyone at Good Shepherd, this pastor will never ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to roll up my sleeves and get down in the ditch and do. I think my pastor said something like that a while ago, but that's always been my mantra. I want people to know that I'm not up here. I'm right down here in the ditch with you. When going gets tough, the tough ain't gonna get going away from y'all. He's gonna get going with y'all. I'm an ex-Marine, and I just believe in hitting something straight at it. I'm not running away from it. If I have a problem in our church or in our community, and Pastor Leggins will tell you, Pastor Troy will tell you, we go straight at it. So that's.
Is there any particular program that your ministry does that you're proud about in the realm of practical?
I'm very proud of, like my pastor, Dr. Troy, I'm very proud of the fact that we're not big enough to have adopted, 5 blocks. But we have adopted 3 blocks. We call it the Golden Rectangle.
I hear you, Taylor.
All right. And it goes from Cleveland at Core all the way down to Dresden, all the way back up to Hudson, all the way back up to Cleveland Avenue. And we are out there in our community. We want people to know not just that who we are, but that we are there for them. We're there for them. And we're there trying to meet, and once again, we are reassessing what those needs are for our community.
Pastor Salmon pitched the question to you. Let me reframe it just a little bit. You can choose your approach. How do we balance spiritual ministry with practical ministry? You can answer it on an individual level, or you can answer it on a corporate level. And is there a particular program that you're proud of? that the ministry does in the financial space.
So for me, and this is just me, I don't see a difference between the two because of how I view my relationship with God. So I cannot say, and I think where we get in trouble sometimes in church is there's those who get so caught up in spiritual and those who get so caught up in community. For me, you can't separate the two. I cannot say that I'm concerned about you spiritually if you have no food in your fridge.
That's right.
Fine.
That's right.
So for me, there is no separation between the two. What I do throughout the week has to show up in what I do on Sunday morning. Or there's a disconnect in the way in which I view God. That's just kind of where I come down. And for me, that kind of informs the way in which we do programming. I tell our congregation, more so our leaders, that I'm really not caught up in trying to pump out 5 million programs. That's not my goal. Because I would rather do one thing well
That's right.
than do a million things with mediocrity. So for me, if we can get one thing right and somebody's better for it in that one thing, I'm cool. We have over 100 and some churches in Lincoln.
Come on.
If I can focus on this one thing, and Pastor Liggins can focus on this one thing, and then the church around the corner can focus on this one thing, it'll get done. So for me, I tend to combine the two. I don't separate them. And then I find, solace and balance and understanding that it's not my job to solve all of it. My job is to pick what it is that God has called me to do.
That's right.
And bring my little bit of piece of solution to the table, and prayerfully everybody else does the same. As far as programming is concerned, I'm really proud of our Windsor Fest and our Soulful Steps. The Soulful Steps program we started a month ago, and it was started by some young adults in the church who I think really wanted to just line dance, but they brought it to me and baked it in a way that made sense to me, to where it said, Pastor, we're in a food desert, we don't have any grocery stores around here. And we know that high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, all these other things run high in our community. And there's not a lot of things as far as exercise, because a lot of people don't think exercise is fun. We want to have a program where people can come to the church twice a month. They can line dance, bring in somebody, bring in a nutritionist, and why don't we transport people to a full-service grocery store once a month? And for me, I said, bet, because I like the line dance. And all that other stuff, people will be in a better, prayerfully blessed after. So we started that, and we've had a really good response in that program. And then Winter Festival, which we do in June, and this will be the 3rd year that we've done it. Last year we saw 300+ people, where we shut down a street where our church is open, and we have every resource imaginable, haircuts, book bags, health, Adam H, all this other stuff, and to really bring back unity in that part of our community. I think that's something that I'm kind of proud of. We all get together on that day. Ain't no shirts, ain't no ties. We just together for a really, really good time. And no matter what your situation is, there's space for everybody kind of at the table collectively. I'm proud of all this.
And Mr. Adam, Mr. Kerry, make sure that you all are managing me and my time.
I got you.
Pastor Liggins, I wanna piggyback on something that Pastor Stanley said. He said there's over 100 churches in the Linden area. I'm not the smartest man in the world, and I did my way through high school and college. I can confess that tonight. But I would think that if there's 100 churches within the Linden community, I would think that there should be no need that could not be met. How do we learn to work together? How do we learn this, what appears to be something that escapes us within the context of ministry? Dr. Troy opened by saying, yes, the preachers get along, right? But we're not talking about just getting along. We're talking about learning how to work together in collaboration. Let Dr. Stanley do what he's good at. Let Dr. Troy do what he's good at. Let Dr. Taylor do what he's good at. Let Pastor Liggins. How do we work together?
Yeah, so, Pastor Tatum, we anguish over this. chair and co-chair of the Concerned Linden Clergy Group, and trying to get the other churches involved. I mean, and trying to get them to understand that there is power in numbers, right? We have more clout when we come together. You know, if politicians, if city officials, if they only see about 2 or 3 churches doing anything in Linden, they're not gonna concern themselves with what they have to say. But can you imagine if 100 churches got together as one voice, you know? And so that is a struggle. So we meet, we try to, you know, brainstorm, how can we convince these others that we have a need. You know, this community has a need for us to come together, you know, to collaborate, to strengthen, to combine our voice. So, you know, we're not stopping on that. You know, we talked this morning about us meeting, and that's one of our biggest goals. How do we increase our voice, right? Because voice is power.
Awesome. Any other thoughts from the panel? 100 churches in the Linden area. How do we inspire collaboration and get, 75 of those churches moving in the same direction? How about 25? How about 25, Ms. Peggy?
Let's say for us, it's an ongoing engagement, to say the least. But when you think about our community collectively, where else do you have 5 leaders or anything black or brown that works together? And so for me, I understand it, I hear it, it keeps me up at night. And as I said from the say, we won't do anything now that's not replicatable. And I think we've got to be willing to learn from each other and those kinds of things, and deliver me from the superstar status of one person being an answer to everything, because that's not going to happen. There's too many folk who have skills and talents. But I think that, Sister Peg, is symptomatic of our community, because we developed this hero worship thing, and not being able to get beyond what's in the best interest of the masses, as opposed to my FaceTime, my march, whatever else the case may be. And that's an ongoing challenge. I think those who have the greatest voice are those who supposedly we lead. And I think they've got to say, we're not going to keep putting up with this, and hold us accountable for that. And so, as we have said, we've had these conversations. It's an indictment. There's no other way to put it. I mean, take 100 churches. There should be nothing that happens in Linden that we can't handle, and or get the evidence of City Hall, police, whatever else the case may be. I struggle with the fact that seemingly the media thrives on every time something negative happens in Linden, they list us. You know, they list Linden and whatever. We challenge them about those kinds of things, but it can happen in Clintonville, and all of a sudden it's the university area. It ain't Clintonville. So it's just the dynamics of that. But if we had that answer, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to y'all right now.
I do want to say this before we move on, because this is one of the things that I always push to the forefront concerning the clergy. Jesus only had 12. One of them was the betrayer. But still, those men went and turned this world upside down. We've got to start someplace. If we had the same attitude, well, because nobody else is doing anything, we're not going to do anything, then guess what? We wouldn't get anything done. I think my pastor said it best. News reporter came to him one time, and you can jump in, Pastor, anytime you want to, and asked him a stupid question. Asked him, what is the church doing? What is the pastors doing? Where are you? My pastor told me where we always been. But guess what, when we down in the ditch, we don't see any cameras down in there. See, it's only when something bad happens in our community that all of a sudden we see all of you. So although we may not have that 100, well, we got some of that 100, there's really 90 something now that we don't have. We may not have all of those. I believe God can take the ones that he has. And he's already proven that. Because many of you may not realize that if it was not for these pastors, a few years ago, Linden McKinley would have probably been closed and turned into a military. But because God had a few, they decided to no, we're not going to allow this to happen. Look what he did. Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand.
Oh, that's good, thank you so much. Question to the panel. How are your churches working with other community organizations to expand your impact? Other community organizations, or I'll add to that, civic organizations to expand your impact? How is your church partnering? Not just with other churches, but with other community organizations and or civic organizations to expand your impact?
So, yeah, I believe in getting and being engaged. So there is so many, there is a good amount of organizations in Linden Anti-Violence, for instance. There's a lot of organizations in Linden that are doing great things. And whenever I can, I try to collaborate with them, participate with them. If it's picking up trash, it's weird because the church has to be a integral part of the community, and I feel like when we are with the organizations, right, we bring the peace of God. We bring hope, right? And the church is to bring hope to the community. How can you bring hope to the community? If you're not there, how can you bring peace to the situation? So we go into the schools, and I truly believe that when we go into Linden McKinney, we bring the peace of God with us, and I really believe that that's making a difference to decrease the number of fights, to bring hope, to encourage the kids. And so you gotta be involved. And so as much as possible, when this organization is doing something, I want to be there. South Linden Area Commission meeting, I want to be there, show support.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else want to tackle that question? How is your church, not just collaborating with other churches, but collaborating with other community organizations or civic organizations to expand your impact?
The multi-task. We've been able to fund dollars behind things that would not have worked and nobody knew. Linden McKinley band was trying to get to Memphis, didn't have enough money. We got a call. We made up a difference. So things like that. I am a frustrated educator, and so anything about young people we're trying to do and trying to help them. And I'm not the guy that needs social media coverage, needs the news to do all that. Let's get this thing done and keep moving. In terms of those things, the fact that you're here tonight out of community of character, that comes out of some hard thoughts. How do we raise up the leadership that's in Linden and around Linden to give them a voice, to give them access to folks that they would? You got leaders all across the place. But where would you have met other folk you see in this room tonight if not for this? And to try to align your purpose to say, we can support you in what you're doing without having to take it over. In terms of, and I'm a strong believer in the money we raise sometimes can be the gap that folk need to get stuff done, and we don't have to always go to other folk outside our community to fund in terms of those stuff. And so that's kind of been how when I was thinking, because I realize it's been 4 years now, Pastor Stanley first came to Linden, I went and talked to him, said, look, you're at the south end, we're at the north end, how do we make this thing happen in terms of those kind of things? So whatever folks are doing, where we can be supportive, you won't necessarily see the New Salem name out there, but our folks are involved and trying to help wherever we can help and be supportive, in terms of those kind of things.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, family, at this time, we're gonna shift just a little bit. We're gonna pass the microphone to the cohort. We'll give you all a chance to ask our panelists. I guess Dr. Taylor knew this part was coming and tried to step down on us. We're gonna open it up to you all. He's back, awesome. We're gonna open it up to you all to pose questions to our panelists. Obviously, we're talking about community impact, we're talking about leadership, but, you know, I guess we'll say this, you know, with an asterisk next to it, nothing is really off the table. Ms. Pegg.
I would like to identify at least 12 bodies of believers within the Linden community that I could, that you would recommend, because my thought is, when I learned that we had, years ago, that we had 88 churches within our boundaries, now it's a number of 100. And what I hear in a number of the civic groups, you know, Greater Linden Business Network, Advisory Council, when we had the block party, all of those groups kept asking for the church to be a part of it. And the Greater Linden Advisory Council did a project of starting to go to the church when the church had a, you know, prayer meeting, something like that. We get on their calendar to do what we call a community network event, because we learn, and I'm still learning, I'm on this mission to visit all these 88 churches, but I'd like to reduce it down to 12, because I like what you're saying, Pastor Charles, that Jesus took 12, and I would get 12 churches to be inspired, to recognize that they're, because they are within the boundaries of Linden, we need one member to be a part of one of the civic groups that we had, or, you know, to be a little voice. Because I did that with the advisory council, and that's how I was able to get members on to attend one of our
So,
meetings.
Ms. Pegg, is your question, are you asking the panel
I'm asking them
identify 12?
if they can identify 12 congregations of body of believers within Linden that I could work with to promote us working together and them being a part of the community, because they are, not just because a number of them are, as Pastor Troy indicated, are not in walking distance. They live outside of Linden.
Yeah.
But we can identify.
I think we got your charge. We're gonna make that a charge to you, gentlemen,
Uh-huh.
that you all can identify really 8 additional churches to where, we can create that. Sister Eric Beck.
Have you guys figured out why other churches are not joining? Because when I'm in the community servicing, the question is, where is the church? And we say to them, and I know I can say, they are here, they're doing the work, because Pastor Liggins works with us, cleaning up, he's very humble. Pastor Stanley's on the south area of the commission, he's doing the work, right? Have you identified these churches and why? Why are they not joining the fight? Why do you think that is?
I'll begin that. I don't know if I'd be able to totally answer this, but I remember when we were first putting together the Concerned Linden Clergy Group, Dr. Troy made a suggestion that we sponsor a meal, a lunch, and that we invite, we sent invitations out to basically all of the churches. I think we may have had maybe 30 or 40 that actually showed up. At that time, things seemed promising. But you know, many times, if the agenda that leaders have set for an organization is not per se what you think should be going on, then sometimes they don't want to be a part of it. And I think it goes back to, I think what Pastor Leggins was saying, you know, when it comes to our community, we all ought to be on the same page. You know, regardless of your religious denomination, what your personal preference may be, there's just certain things that we should be able to come together and be one about. Now, I can be brutally honest with you. I have this philosophy, and it is the kingdom principle. You know, I'm not gonna get up off of my kingdom. And I'm gonna leave it like that.
Yeah. Right.
So-
That's her question?
Yeah, to think of that, so, and again, youngest pastor in the city, my tenure, 3 years, so I might be totally left, but this is my thing. One, I see sometimes that they might not know how to. So I think one of the things that we have to be honest about is how COVID really affected the church. And what it did on the mind of the preacher pastor. Now, I was blessed because I came in right after COVID. I didn't have to make the transition to shut the church down, talking to people through live stream and things of that nature. I didn't have to make that transition, or I came in and transitioned the church out of, it's time to come back now, come on y'all. So I think a lot of times, one of the things is they might not know how to. There are now, and again, I might be totally left, sometimes there are a lot of congregations that leadership is of a certain age, that they may just age out of being able to have practical thinking around that type of ministry. I just can't let it go. I'm just here, I'm sitting in the seat. I don't know how. So that's, for me, that's one thing. Second thing may be, and it's a tough truth, they might not care. One thing that's very clear to me is that not everybody that lives here cares about living the way that they should. It's just the truth. When I'm walking through Rosewind and I'm talking to folks, knocking on doors, and for me, when we do our door-to-door, I don't do door-to-door, hey, come to church. I teach our folks, no, door-to-door, hey, what do you need?
Yeah.
What can we do in the community? It's gonna sound messed up because it's supposed to be. I don't care whether or not I wanna meet where you are first. But a lot of folk that they really don't care. And it could be that same mindset. The last and third, I wrote down because I don't want to forget it. So they know how to, they don't care. Or sometimes it could be that they are. My thing is that if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, it still makes a sound. And I think sometimes and I think that number is smaller. And I experienced this when I first started doing community work. There were things that we were doing, it was just nobody around that was doing other work that was like, oh man, you know, Greg Troll's doing X, Y, and Z. But as we kept doing it, you know, that changed. Sometimes there's just not light shined on it. I would have never known about what Dr. George just said, you know, hey, the band needed X, Y, and Z. We said, don't worry about it, here you go. We did the same thing when that jumping incident, that family got jumped on the way walking to school. And they said, you know what, we need flashlights so that way we can walk these kids to school. I went to a commission meeting, because I was on the commission meeting, I went back to the church and said, hey, we might not be able to pay for the band to do X, Y, and Z, but we can buy some flashlights. That's in my budget, I can afford flashlights. And don't nobody need to know we bought flashlights, but that's that. So I think it might be a combination of the three of those.
I'm gonna interject, and I don't pastor in, and I think another piece is people are always worried about who's gonna get credit.
There you go.
Brother School, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Tell me, is the Concerned Linden Clergy Group accepting non-clergy members?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay.
We got a whole lot of partners that work with us within that group that are not clergy.
Where would we find that information?
We'll make sure
And
Pastor Leggins and I will make sure you get that. Usually, Delana Scales, make sure that she gets that information
Is
out.
that the one Linden?
Yes.
When I get the t-shirt? Okay. Yeah, y'all been, yeah, let's share that information. Thank you.
Okay,
Ms.
hi.
Sanchez.
Yes, hi. So in light of what we're seeing the messaging come from the current administration, and I know as Christians, we're supposed to submit to our governing authorities as long as it doesn't, lead us to sin. How are you all encouraging your congregation in the midst of what I think is an attack on the Black church, when from the administration level, they are attacking social justice issues or a lot of issues and concerns that really serve the Black community, Black history? How are you all encouraging and edifying your congregation to stay encouraged during what seems to be, I don't want to call it demonic, but it's been very divisive?
Say that.
Yeah.
Great question.
I'm looking up, doing well done. When this particular president got elected, I probably said in my pulpit, he is good for the Black church.
Yes, he is.
Because folk who forgot about the church in other political times have found their way back. And also brought the support and the willingness to understand, just because I live so and so and I thought it doesn't affect me. You got folks getting laid off now who can't even spell it, they never thought it was going to happen. We're being taxed in the sense of meeting those kinds of needs. We have folk in the line now to get food on Wednesday who never thought they'd be in the line to get food on Wednesday. So we continue to do what we've always done and always try to provide hope for those who come on Sunday. It ain't the first time we've been down this road. And we have survived. When you think about what those who've gone before us have survived, come on, we've been at ease in Zion. And every now and then life just grabs us by the collar and wakes us up and says, you gotta remember the folk you left behind. When you thought you were better than, well guess what? We all in the same food line now. And so, to me, is the greatest time for the church to do what's been called to do. And that's to look after our brothers and sisters no matter what. You don't have to belong to me for me to support you. I don't think that's true with any of us. You come, got a man who came to me on Sunday who was homeless. I had no idea he was homeless. Been living in this van for 2 weeks. If you looked at it, you never would have known. That's right. Got it to me, I was able to call one of our members who specializes in housing for men. Called her yesterday, he's there now. But if you would have told me, I would not have known. So part of this is you gotta let us know, we all know somebody who can do something. In terms of stuff, but we're gonna do what we always gonna do.
Yeah, so then, after November 6th, that next day after that election was devastating. We worked so hard. We put on voting drives, we knocked on doors, start, from registration to get out of the road, sold to the polls, organization, even on that very election day, from like 8 a.m. to 1 o'clock, I made 100 calls trying to, get people, and it was frustrating. The day after election wasn't the only frustrating part. The frustrating part was leading up to it. When you knock on the doors and people like, what does it matter to me? What is my vote gonna do? And so, but now, I think they're gonna pay more attention when we knock on the door. But like Pastor Troy said, hope. So now it's about telling people to hold on. It's gonna get better, but I truly believe. So we got a midterm election coming up. We don't have to wait 4 years. We can make a difference in the midterm election, right? And so if we do what we did before, put that energy into those midterm elections, I believe we're going to get better results because people are seeing the effect of what happens when you don't vote. But until then, we can hold on, and we can hold on. But believe that change is going to come.
Awesome. And I'm gonna go ahead and take the privilege to maybe pose that question a little different way. What is the responsibility of the Black preacher as it relates to preaching on social justice and equity, things of that nature?
I
think, you know, and one of the things that I hold fast to, I understand, you know, that we need to get souls to the fold, blah, blah. Well, I think God trying to tell us something.
It's a test of faith.
I think God trying to tell us something.
It is.
You know, there's a song that says, if he did it before, he can do it again. Same God right now, same God back then. Some folks didn't get the message. They missed the memo. But what I always tell our church is this. This is not our first rodeo. See, one thing that the African American people are used to, we know how to adapt. My mama could take a pot of pinto beans and some homemade biscuits, and she stretched it for that go 2 weeks if she had to. You know, so this is not something new to us, but what we need to look at is simply this. God has taken care of us through things that are much worse than this. When Mr. Trump was in office the first time, and when COVID hit, everybody talking about, you know, oh, everything gonna fall apart. You know, I had pastors telling me, I don't know what we gonna do. You know, and I said, well, I'm gonna keep on holding on God's unchanged hand. That's what I'm gonna keep on doing. And you know, they were worried about the Zoom and all that kind of stuff. And I said, bro, I don't know about your church. I said, but I got folk giving better now than when they were coming into the physical. Because I got folk, I had people from Jamaica, all kinds of places that see in our service and stuff, and they are helping us. And we can't, and as far as us getting thin and getting malnutrition, my folk was fatter. So I just want to throw that out there.
We got time for about 6, 7 questions. We got time for one more question. And then we're going to give some closing remarks or take some closing remarks from the members. I believe Sister Bittman actually had her hand up first. This is the last question from the cohort to her, and then we're going to ask the pastors to give us let's go with that.
Okay, I first want to say thank you all for coming today. This panel was really insightful to me. And as we are growing in our Linden Leadership Academy, one thing we have been talking about is Columbus, as we know, is the fastest growing city in the U.S. We have so many new American communities who are coming right here to Linden. And so when we think about collaboration amongst the church and our new interfaith communities, what is that currently looking like when we are trying to unify all of our communities with so many different backgrounds and barriers to connecting with those that are living right in our backyard?
I think one of those is respecting where they have come from and not trying to make them be who we are. We're blessed to do a lot of foreign mission. If I've ever come up missing, I'll be in Cape Town, South Africa. In terms of just that whole experience. And understand the Columbus that we came to is not the Columbus that it is. When we feed on Wednesday night, it's the United Nations. And it's interesting to watch that. So we have even sometimes brought linguists in to help us be able to communicate to them and not try to make them have to speak English to get weighted on those kinds of. I think the church has to be flexible based upon its audience. The greatest example for diversity in our community is either Walmart or Target.
That's right.
If you go there, you see folks from all kinds of backgrounds. And so we've got to learn to flex and say, everybody can't come down this lane, because that's no longer what Linden is. You look at the Somali community, that's primarily Islam. I'm not going to insult my Islamic brothers and sisters. Now, it's interesting, they will come and get services from us, and that's fine, they'll get fed, but they're not coming on Sunday morning. And that's okay. And so I think it has to be that mutual respect for where people came from. One of the most gut-wrenching things was Agler, about 2-3 months ago, was literally half Latino in rental property. When this whole thing hit with this immigration, we saw folks literally move in the middle of the night.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, because they were all renters.
That's right.
And so folks we have been seeing, we're not seeing in terms of, so I think we just gotta be flexible and whoever comes through that door comes, and we deal with it.
That's good. All right, family, we're going to close out now. What I'm going to ask from our panelists is if you can give a charge to this group, this cohort, they're ready to graduate next week. They're going to go through all this training, we're going to pour it into ending this cohort with a conversation with you all to not leave here and do so. So I'm starting with Pastor Liggins, and let's try to keep it to 30 to 45 seconds, Jason. If you can give this group a charge or a call to action.
Jose, remember that this is what I tell some people when I'm in the community. God has need of you, right? God has need of you. I want to, you know, we're in the community helping people, but just recently the Lord convicted me by saying that the best thing you could do for them is bring them into church. Yes, it's good to go out. You gotta go out. But in addition to going out, bring them in, right? Because, you know, the body of Christ is the greatest organism in this that God created, right? And so bring them in. God has need of you. I encourage you, make sure you're connected with your local church. Because the more you're involved, the greater your church will do for the community and for this world.
Pastor Taylor.
I say, simply this: let your leadership be genuine. Let it be genuine, because guess what? Somebody's always watching you. I think about my daughter, and it gets real scary. Because I found out that every time I would make a wrong turn, she was right behind me. And it really helped me to straighten up and fly right, because I did not want to lead my baby in the wrong path. Somebody watching you. Believe that. And how you lead may determine where they go. I'm going to leave it like that.
That's good. Pastor Stanley.
I would say be bold enough to build doesn't exist, but resourceful enough to strengthen the good things that already stand. I say all the time that Linden, pretty much for the most part, has everything that it needs. We have a disseminating issue where sometimes folk don't know what all we got. However, sometimes there are things that we need that don't exist, but God may have put it in you. Don't second guess that. Be bold enough to build it. However, there are things that already stand that need your support in strengthening it. And to tackle on to Pastor Liggins' charge, the Black church is one of those things. That's it.
Don't confuse the audience with the army. Most folks come to watch, they don't come to fight.
Right.
And you'll get knocked out
Watch it.
expecting the audience to help with the fight.
Come on now. That's good.
That's for something.
That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we put our hands together?
Pastor John.
Stay right here. Y'all know how we do this. Let's get a quick